Welcome to the Self-Publishing School Podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Bob Lotich. I'm joining you from the Boathouse for maybe one of the last times we'll see on the pod. So Bob is he's a high-performing financial coach. He's got an award-winning website and podcast, SeedTime.com, and the SeedTime Money Podcast, which yours truly has been a guest on. We did a little pre-launch strategy session over there on the SeedTime Money Podcast. The site and the podcast have reached over 50 million people in the past decade. He's the author of multiple books, including his most recent book, Simple Money, Rich Life. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you can see that beautiful framed book cover / just amazing piece of artwork in the background. So we're going to be talking about behind the scenes of his most recent launch. We'll also talk maybe a little bit about getting reviews for your book. He's got a bunch of reviews on a couple of his books, self-publishing versus traditional publishing, unpacking a bunch of stuff here. I'm excited for this chat. Bob, welcome. Great to have you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to chat and dive in.
It's fun going full circle, on your podcast and kind of, I feel like it was part interview, part like we're just prepping and brainstorming for the launch.
Yeah.
And then now to be able to recap and say, hey, what worked, what didn't, what'd you learn? So I guess for starters, why books? Like you've got, according to Amazon, 3 books now that you've published over the years. And there might even be a couple more that are discontinued.
Kind of books,
So yeah. So why books? Why have they been such a big part of your life and what you do?
Yeah. So I accidentally wrote my first Kindle book. It was a blog post that had been 8,000 words or something like that. And this was probably 2010, maybe. And I thought, you know what? Kindle was kind of out and becoming a little bit of a thing. I'm like, I'll just throw it up on there and see what happens. And so I added a little bit to it, maybe 10,000 words. I don't really know. And it just started kind of doing well on Kindle. And so anyway, so that just got my, wheels turning a little bit, like just thinking about that a little bit. And I ended up doing a couple more self-published books. But I will say none of them I felt like I put in the effort to really create a great book that it takes to make a really great book. You know what I mean? It's easy to just throw something up on Kindle. And anyway, so my last book, when I went with a traditional publisher, like very much dove all in and like really tried to make as great of a book as possible. And so anyway, we can go wherever you want from there.
Got it. So you said, hey, I'm going to go maybe a little bit slower and more methodically. Is that the word? But I'm going to make a better book that's kind of built to last.
Yeah.
And then you obviously traditionally publish. We'll unpack that a little bit later. I'm curious to hear your thoughts between the two. Why this most recent book? What was the impetus for this book, and how did you see? It feels like this was kind of the book that was very on brand for you, and kind of like a brand book. Why this book, and how did you see it kind of growing your business or your brand?
Yeah. So I've started blogging in 2007. And then from there, wrote a couple of those books, started podcasting, started creating courses like YouTube, like started doing all of the digital media creator stuff. And anyway, and so basically we're like 15 years later, and I just kind of realized that all of those things, it's hard to wrap all of that, and maybe not a course, but in terms of a podcast, a blog, a YouTube channel, like it's hard to just take all of the information and put it in an orderly package to hand someone. And a book is really good at that. You know this. A book is really, really good for that purpose. And so that was a lot of the motivation behind it. How do I take everything I've learned, everything I've done, everything that's worked for me, roll that up into one package that I can hand someone? And then, as well as I do, like, books reach a different audience and they carry a level of credibility with them that is still really funny to me. Like, because I don't get it, because it's so easy, but yet it carries this credibility with it that is just a different thing. Like, there's a lot of people who just care more about the fact that you have a book than they do that you have 100,000 YouTube subscribers, and it's like, they don't care about that. That doesn't mean anything to them. But the fact that you're an author, it's like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to take him seriously now,
And have you seen that I mean, I know it's only been a few months since the launch, but have you seen that come to fruition?
Yes.
On the other side of this? How
100%. Like, it's blown my mind, like, on a new level through all this. I had this, this might happen to you all the time, but like, I had this guy reach out who said, hey man, I'm going to be in Franklin. I know you live there. Like, I don't know you from Adam, but I want to come over to your house and have you autograph my book. And I'm like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
The guy came over and, just tell me how much he loves the book. Anyway, it's just stuff like that. And then in terms of people reaching out, wanting to, I guess, pay me more money for deeper dive services that we don't even offer yet. They were actually working on developing right now, like a higher end, more involved product, because people just keep asking for it. And it just really kind of started since we wrote the book. So it's been really good.
That's really interesting. It's funny to me because, I mean, this wasn't your first book. Just like, my most recent book wasn't my first book either. And I started giving them out a lot. And that's just one thing I learned from Hal Elrod. I remember going to his breakfast or lunch or something with him, and he gets into a conversation with the server. He's like, hold on, I'll be right back. And he runs out to his car and he grabs the book and he gives him a book. And I just saw him do that at least one or two or three times. And it dawned on me, oh, wow, this is a way to deepen relationships just in my local community. It's like, it's easy to think about, oh, this in the digital world, you got a big blog, a big YouTube channel, all this. It's like, all right, it's going to expand the reach there. But just deepening relationships and creating momentum and reciprocity for your business locally. And so I've been doing this. We were talking before this. I'm in the middle of renovations. And so I have people show up to do different things. They'll say, oh, hey, by the way, like, here's a copy of it. This is my new book. Maybe if you know anyone that's writing a book, that might be helpful for them. If not, maybe you can read it or whatever. Just give it to them.
So, okay, I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Can I want to pick your brain on this real quick. Yeah. So in terms of Hal, like, I know he's sold a couple million copies, like a lot.
Yeah. Millions. I think it's like maybe even 2 or 3 million.
Yeah. I mean, so really, really good. And I thought I remember hearing that Stephen Pressfield had given out 18,000 copies of The War of Art. Don't know if that's accurate, but I thought I had heard that.
That's really interesting.
So I'm curious, like, are you of the mindset now, like, where you're giving out a book to anyone who will take it from you, or are you shooting for someone who expresses some level of interest? And so it's not just going to be whatever, a coffee table paperweight type thing.
That's a great question. And that's it. I just interviewed Stephen Pressfield at our live event a couple weeks ago. I wish I would have known this. I would ask, or this stat, I would have asked him about it. Well, so let me hit the punchline on that story and then come back and answer your question. And so I think the thing that was interesting to me, having been an author for a while now, is just seeing it in real life. People are like, oh my gosh, can you sign this? And then I'll tell my family that I had the author sign it. Just like the guy who said, I don't know you from Adam, but I'm coming to Franklin. I want you to sign my book. It's this very kind of interesting real life personification of something that it's like, I don't even see myself as that. Yeah. It's like this guy that's going to sign your book and you're going to go tell your family about it. It's like, that's kind of crazy to me. But to answer your question, I guess directly, I think it depends on the end goal for your book, and maybe not. Like, I think I think you can do a lot of online stuff and to spark a grassroots movement. It's one person to one person, which then kind of cascades and goes one to many. And so for me, the goal of the book is to grow the business. So I look at it as a $5 business card. It's better than a business card. I give someone a business card, they're going to throw it away probably within 24 hours. I give them the book, they keep it, and maybe they give it to someone that wants to write a book. Maybe they read it, but it's in their office or home. And every time they see it, they think of me and my business. And so, and then locally, it's just, I feel like it kind of fits the ethos of what I like to do, which is add value first. And, and so for me, it's like, oh, cool. If someone's, whether they're cleaning my house or delivering furniture, or, I'm going to the chiropractor or whatever, I just give it out. And then, crazy stuff happened. Like I went to the chiropractor, random thing, and gave him a copy of the book. And next thing I know, it's sitting there as like on the wall of like, these are my patients.
Oh, wow.
It's like that book's there. So everyone that comes in there, it's there.
That's
and so
great.
Just little bitty things like that. And then that sparked a conversation with the guy in the office one time who's writing a book. And I said, oh, hey, let me run out to the car and grab you a copy.
Yeah.
And so just kind of sparks this thing, which for me, it's $5 or $6. It's not a big deal. And it starts off a relationship off right, which I don't know. What's your take?
Yeah. I mean, well, I do know, like in terms of back end, I think at the moment, like, I mean, you have a really good refined back end that this book ties real nicely into. And so like, it makes solid sense for you. Like us, it's a little bit more indirect of a play. Like we're, from our book, driving people into, different email funnels. That's really what we probably did 12 different resources out of the book that we're pointing them to the site where they can go deeper with us and whatever. And none of them are direct sales, but they get them on our email list, and then possibly they end up joining one of our other courses. And we're creating, like I said, a higher product now. So it's a little bit less direct, but still, in my case, with this book, in the success that I feel like we've seen, and anecdotally, the feedback that we've gotten, like I'm very confident about the book in terms of its ability to change someone's life if they actually read it. So it has me, because like at this point, anyone who's been expressed any interest, I just give it to them. But I haven't been like just staying on a street corner, like passing it out type of thing. And so I'm like trying to figure out that sweet spot of what level of interest do I want to hand it to someone to, you know what I mean? And so that's why I asked, but that's helpful. Helpful.
It's a great question. And I think my current best thinking is I'm trying to remember to do this actually, but it's like, if I go to an entrepreneur dinner or a mastermind dinner or something where there's a group of smart people, I'm trying to remember to just bring books for everyone. And I feel like there's a part of me that's like, this is kind of tacky. But then there's another part of me that's like, no, I'm literally giving someone some of my best work. And I'm just adding that. And if it sparks a conversation, it sparks a conversation, but with no expectation. And it's led to, I've done that a few times, and it's led to opening a bunch of doors. Which has been really cool. So talk to me, Bob, about the launch. How did you launch successfully? I know we kind of talked on your podcast on a precursor of this. How did you launch successfully, and what were the top 2 or 3 things that sold the most books?
Well, I'll just thank you again for doing that podcast with me, because there was, and I just did a podcast with someone yesterday, and he said, this is really selfish. I have so many questions. I'm like, those are the best podcasts. And that's what it was with you. Like, I got so much benefit out of that. Just being able to bounce ideas off you. But we focused primarily on podcast outreach. We created a launch team. The social side, besides the launch team, like, I don't know, we didn't hit the gas too hard on that, because I don't know, I just felt like I've asked a lot of people in our world lately about what's moved the needle the most. And every single time I feel like people say social is kind of the lowest on that. Like just carpet bombing Instagram with your book 100 times a day. Like, I don't know. I just don't think that format works. There might be a better, more strategic way of doing it, but podcasts, particularly podcasts that obviously are right in line with your target market, and especially if there's a decent following, seem to do well. Our publicist, we just used a publicist from the publisher. Our tradition, we went with Waterbrook, which is the Christian imprint of Penguin Random House, and their publicist there, I honestly thought did a pretty good job. And I went in like with really low expectations, because everyone I've talked to who is traditionally published said like the marketing side, they're just terrible. Like you have to expect them to do nothing. And I felt like our publicist opened up a few doors that were helpful. And all of that stuff, it's a combination of effort, like our story and how we're presenting it, and his outreach and all this stuff. But I felt like we got some good, decent sized doors opening. And even now, like, we still have some interviews that we haven't done yet because they've been on the books for 3 months type of thing. But I would say for us, in terms of what moved the needle the most, obviously our email list, like we have a decent sized email list we've been building for a long time. And so that was the biggest thing, I think, in the initial launch week. Podcasts over the 3 or 4 month period, where I guess we're at about 4 months now, have very much sustained a lot of the sales, I guess. But I would say those are the big things that have moved the needle the most, from my perspective.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. Awesome. So kind of two-part follow-up on that. I think it'd be easy for someone listening on the podcast or watching on the YouTube channel to say, hey, Bob, you built an audience for, like you said, 10, 15 years, and you got this massive audience. I don't have that. And so I think maybe a two-part question. One would be, were there components that you did that you're like, hey, I did these 2 or 3 things. You can do that without an audience or with an audience. And that moved the needle. And actually, I'll stop there, and then I'll ask the second part of the question after I get your response.
If I were starting over and I didn't have an audience, honestly, a lot of what you wrote in this book answers that question. But like the podcast thing, it was interesting. So I started with the publicist and just kind of tapped into all of the people he could reach. And then I reached out to, so I think everyone has an audience. It's just a matter of whether you have a specific audience around what you're talking about, in which, I'm sure you talk about this, but that's the first step. Like, as soon as you start writing your book, like, start building an audience somewhere, an ideally email list. If you can build an email list, I still think that's the most valuable thing. But I think it's really important too. Like, I found this to be helpful, and often overlooked, the value of just going to your own personal Facebook page or personal Instagram account or whatever, just letting people know what's going on and asking them. So I sent this email, and I actually remember James Clear saying this. Send an email saying, hey, I'm launching a book in 6 months. If you have any contacts, anyone in the press, anyone in the media who you think might be helpful, like, just let me know, shoot me an email back. Cause like, that warm introduction is invaluable, because I very much found that a lot of the cold outreach is just really hard. Like, especially for podcasts. I mean, you're a podcaster, I'm a podcaster. We know, like, we get inundated with people wanting to be on the show, and it's hard. I don't know if anybody has ever emailed me asking to be on my podcast and gotten on, like, who I didn't know already. Like, cold outreach is just really, really hard. And I don't have like huge podcasts. Like, we're very much like middle of the road. And like, so for big A-list podcasts, like, you need an introduction. And so I think tapping into the world that you already have around you, cause like, that's been fascinating. Like, as I've done that a couple different times for other projects that we're working on, and just asking our audience, it's like, who do you know who does this? And it's always surprising. Like, so anyway, I think that it can be really, really helpful, even if it's just your own personal Facebook page with 100 people,
So asking people in your life, who do you know in the press or in, that has podcasts, all that stuff. That's great. What would you say? I think a lot of people, it's chicken or the egg. Like, okay, well, do I go do what Bob did? And do I spend 10, 15 years building an audience and then launch a book? Do I launch a book first? Do I kind of do a little bit of both? What's your take, kind of knowing what you know now and being on the other side of the launch?
Oh, I would never do it the way that I did it, like, and waiting, and that's where it's all blurry because, like I said, the first book came out in 2010, which was a topic I was talking about blogging. So that book was exclusively about blogging, in which my primary content that I teach now is nothing to do with blogging. It's all personal finance, money management, how to build your wealth, and whatever, all that stuff. And so it's not really on brand anymore. But if I were starting over now, like with nothing, like I think that would be the path that I would take, is start releasing self-published books and publishing the content on social media or snippets of it, platform specific, as I'm creating it. So writing chapter 1 and 2, and as I do that, maybe release a blog post, maybe do a video on it on YouTube, maybe post some sections of it on Instagram, whatever, just to start growing some sort of following around that content as I'm creating it, as I'm building out the book. Then when the book's done, at least you have something. You have some people to start talking to about it. And you might have even talked about this in here. I don't remember, but that approach is what I would do if I were starting over from scratch.
Got it. Okay. And when he says here or in this book, for those who are listening on podcasts, this is my new book, published, The Proven Path from Blank Page to 10,000 Copies Sold, available everywhere. Grab the audio book. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably like audios.
Fantastic book. Highly recommend it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's true.
So let's talk reviews.
Yeah.
So we talked about how did you launch the book, what actually sold books, all that stuff. I was looking earlier. You've got almost 1,700 reviews on one of your early books on blogging.
Yeah.
And then in the last, it's less, as the time of recording this interview, I want to say it's less than 4 months from pub date of the newest book, and you've already got 227 reviews, which is pretty wild. So obviously you've done a great job getting reviews. What's worked well, and any tips for authors on how to get more reviews?
So the first book, the blogging book, that book, I think that the reason we have as many reviews as we do is that we made the book free. And so we've just had a lot of people download it, and so we're moving tons of copies. And then the only thing I ever did with that book really is just put a call to action asking for a review in the book, in which I think that's underestimated how powerful that can be, especially when you have a lot of people going through it. Now that said, that book, is just dated at this point, and I don't know that I'm going to update it. I'm not really sure. I need to figure that out. Maybe we can have a brand discussion on that, but anyway, so that's all I really did with that one. I made it free on Kindle. And so we've just, over all these years, just sold a whole bunch of copies, and that's how it got to that. This book, I pretty much did everything you said, everything you laid out in this book, published, and have the review sweeper going. So whenever anybody, so like I said, we have about 10 to 12 different spots in our book where we're asking, or we're saying, hey, we got this resource over here to help you solve this problem that we're talking about in this chapter. So just go over there, plug in your email, and we'll send it to you, type of thing. So we have lots of those, and all of those paths ultimately lead to an email sequence where we're, a couple weeks later, how'd you like the book? Let me know. They reply, and then we respond back, and whatever they say, would you mind going over to Amazon and leaving a review? So that was a huge part. The launch team was the key to us getting that first 100. And that was really fun and exciting. That worked really well to getting to that first 100 point. And we did, trying to figure out what all we did exactly with the launch team, but we made it fun, and we made, I just tried to give a lot of value to them for being on the launch team. And, obviously no, you have to leave a review on Amazon type of thing. I didn't want to violate the terms or anything like that, but another thing we did, we also did your giveaway idea that you talked about in the book, where you enter a giveaway by clicking the link that takes them to the review page. Yeah. And I specifically said, you don't have to leave a review here, but if you're bored while you're there, I'm not going to stop you. Yeah. And so that drove a good number of reviews as well. I think that I don't know, that probably got us 25 or 30 reviews,
Oh,
just
awesome.
from one email like that. And so that was fun. But I applied all those different things, and that's how we've gotten to whatever 227 it is right now.
Cool. What'd you give away for that giveaway?
That giveaway. Yeah. So I'll step back real quick and get to that. So one of the things we've done also is we've celebrated the milestone of 100 reviews and 200 reviews.
Super smart.
Like on social, because it's social proof. It validates the book
social proof on social.
And it's one of those things. It's like Instagram. I mean, really, all social media is so good for this. When you can post something, it's like, I'm really excited about this, where it actually is kind of a humble brag too, and validates the social proof of the book, and like that combination of all that stuff. Like, I'm always looking for those things, and so celebrating those milestones are great ways to do that, And so we hit 100. We celebrated that, posted on Instagram. I think we did a giveaway for that, just to our audience, whatever. But for 200, like I posted maybe at 180 or something and said, hey, I asked our community, what should we do when we hit 200 to celebrate? And all kinds of people gave me feedback of what we should give away.
Nice.
And so
that's fine.
So then I just screenshot it and I said, all right, we're going to give it all away. And so it was stuff like people want a signed copy of the book. They wanted all of our courses. They want a one-on-one session with me, blah, 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 all this stuff. And so I said, all right, once we get to 200, we're going to give all this stuff away in one big bundle. And so that was our giveaway for once we reached 200, that was the thing we were going to give away, and they were incented to do that, blah, blah, all that.
Yeah, that's fun. So kind of crowdsourcing what should we give away or do to celebrate, and then now the crowd is naturally behind that goal and hitting that goal because they help decide what you're going to do when you hit it.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Did you you may have mentioned this and I missed it. Did you do the short? I know you said, hey, would you mind copying and pasting that into a link for an Amazon review? Did you do the short link that's like an easy to remember link?
Yep, I created a pretty link just to send them directly because there's been tons of Instagram DMs as well where people just say, hey, really loved your book. And I'm like, great, would you mind in that way I don't have to think about this link. It's just a short, pretty link and just throw it right in there. That's super helpful tip.
Cool. And can you just maybe the 30-second synopsis of what that is for people who aren't familiar with that and why it's effective?
So, if you go and find your actual Amazon review page where you leave a review on it, it's a big, long, ugly link that you're never going to remember. And so one of the easiest things is just if you're using WordPress, like a plugin called Pretty Links, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do this, but go create a really short link. So ours is seedtime.com/review. And so if you just click on that or type in that link, it'll take you directly to our review page and you can just leave a review there because, Amazon it's not super intuitive and easy. It's not dummy proof to leave a review. You go find the book and it's like, all right, where do I need to click to leave a review? And, and so as simple as we can make it for our people to leave a review, it's like, that's what we want to do. Right.
Got it. That's awesome. So let's switch gears, maybe just a little bit. So you've traditionally published your most recent book. You've self-published multiple books. You spoke to this a little bit at the top of this interview. What'd you learn from going each route, and what are maybe pros and cons or your takeaways after the fact?
Yeah. So I know different traditional publishers are different. We went with Waterbrook because they were part of Penguin. And I thought, all right, if we're going to do traditional publishing, let's go with the biggest publisher we can find, have their resources, have their expertise on how to do things, all this stuff. And, and I had people like, Ruth Sukup. I remember she was on your show and she has some very strong opinions about traditional publishing. And I talked to her before I went that route, and she more or less warned me. It's like, this is going to be really hard, and you're going to not like lots of parts of it. And she was right. Like, there were some really hard things in there, just in terms of how the publisher does things, the speed at which they do things, which is very different. It's very, very different, and especially having come from self-published a handful of books and being able to go from idea to execution to on Amazon in a month, like, and going through the process with the publisher for 2.5 years. Like, it's so different. And I created a much better book in every sense of the word, by doing that. But the question is it proportionally that much better. Like, and that's the thing that, like, for me, you know, I would have to factor into the equation again of whether or not I would go with a traditional publisher again, because it was a lot of time invested. You know, and part of what I wanted to learn by going with traditional publishers is just see how exactly they do it, you know, because you know this world, like, you've created great books from a self-published route that look legit, they look good, they don't feel like a cheap thrown together self-published book, and I just want to see how they did it so that even if I didn't go with one again, I could replicate that for myself, doing it the self-published or even a hybrid kind of approach next time. And I feel like I learned all that. I feel like I got that. I would say, yeah, direct me from there.
Yeah.
What else I can answer?
And I would just, are you glad you did it? And what's your thinking if for your next book, if you do another one?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I did it. But not for the reasons that I think a lot of people think. I mean, because we got a decent sized advance. And that was nice, but I would never suggest that anyone go with a traditional publisher for the advance, even if you're getting a really good one. Because if it's just, I think it's just one of the worst ways to make money. Like, my dollar per hour spent, taking that advance into consideration of the hours I spent and worked, it's really, really low.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think a lot of people, I believed this, and I talk to people all the time who are like, well, I don't want to traditionally publish. I want to go with the publisher because they're going to help do a lot of heavy lifting. And that just is not true. Like, every single thing, like, the publisher is depending on you to do the work. They're depending on you to market it. They're, and they certainly do work. I'm not saying they don't do anything. And our publisher did a lot of work, but they're very dependent on the writer to do a lot of things. And I think a lot of writers get in there and they think, oh, well, they're going to do this and they're going to be great at this. And a lot of times, like, I found, well, it's like, I actually think my idea is better than that idea. And anyway, and so those are obviously points of contention that you have to work through, but
yeah. I almost liken it to, not to confuse metaphors or have too many metaphors, but almost like working with a financial services company, you know, and traditional financial services companies are, you know, pretty slow and pretty antiquated. And if you just go with someone based on the lowest fee, then you're like, hey, here's all my money. You might not like the outcome. Or it's like hiring a contractor or someone to do a job and just going on the lowest price. I feel like is almost, it's the inverse, but also the exact same thing as saying, hey, just based on the advance, I'm going to go with this publisher, because that's one part of the check that you're going to get. And then it's and then you're writing a check with the amount of time and energy that you spend on the book to publish it successfully. And so it's, how can I work with the best publisher that's going to save me time, help move more copies, or just be easier to work with in the process. It's a really good takeaway. Kind of lightning round here, a couple of final questions. How did you use your platform to sell books? You got 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, you got an Instagram following, you got a Twitter following, you got a successful blog. Like, is there anything that you did, and for anyone else who has a platform, that you feel like you did well, as either as part of the launch or that you're embedding on an evergreen basis to keep moving copies of the book?
I mean, I'll just start by saying YouTube, like, we do have, it's one of our biggest platforms, but, you know, and this is just the algorithmic mess of YouTube. We didn't figure out how to create great content driving book sales from YouTube. And I'm sure there's ways to do it, but we didn't do that successfully. And honestly, we didn't put a whole lot of thought into how to do that either. And so that didn't do a lot for us, I don't think. And even our podcast, like, we didn't put a lot of work into, well, one thing that we did was probably a series of maybe 10 or 20 episodes post-launch. We put a little boilerplate thing on there, just talking about the book being out, stuff like that. But we didn't make a super strong push for it. But our email list was where we definitely drove the most sales from, and where we had the strongest push, and a lot of that, part of this is just because I think I'm better at it, was more strategic. Some of it's more overt emails where it's like it's just about the book, where the other stuff is a little bit more covert, like addressing a specific problem, and then the solution that we're presenting is the book. And so we hit that from a lot of different angles with our email list, and I think that was the biggest thing. I'm still trying to figure out how to utilize Instagram to the best of our ability to drive book sales. I don't feel like I have that dialed in yet, but yeah.
That's cool. That's helpful. You might, I'm just checking out your YouTube channel and Instagram as we speak. And so you might check out the episode I did with Sean Cannell. Has a book called YouTube Secrets. And he talked a lot about a couple different concepts, but almost your book is the sponsor for the video, or what, like, this book is brought to you by Simple Money, Rich Life. Right. And just like little things like that, and using it in bumpers or intros or outros or that sort of thing to just keep it. So we've got this really powerful SEO so it's like, if you can't crack the algorithm with a video about the book, then it's okay. That you're creating other videos that you can crack the algorithm with, or at least one of them is going to hit. And so using the book as a sponsor or a bumper, or
that's a good idea.
Use YouTube to sell books. That'd be a good episode for you. I think parting couple of questions, Bob. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to the Bob from a year or two ago before publishing this most recent book, and all the other Bobs out there who are thinking about doing maybe their first book altogether, or their first traditionally published book?
I would say that I would warn myself about how stressful it's going to be. Like, I had no idea too how stressful it was going to be, kind of going the traditional publishing route. And I think ultimately what it came down to was that in a lot of ways I became an employee for them again, not again, but I became an employee for the publisher, which was really bizarre because I hadn't really thought of it through those lenses, but like, they had the timeline, they had the schedule, and I had to have X, Y, or Z done by then. Whereas, when you're self-publishing, it's like you control that timeline. It's like, all right, life happens. My son's got a birthday. We're going on vacation. It's like, I can move this timeline if need be, Whereas, like, I actually ended up canceling one vacation and like working the entire other vacation, like on edits and stuff, because they were due and we had to get them back, because all the stuff that I don't even know in the line of all the things were going to happen, and so like that just added a whole lot of stress, undue stress, in my opinion. So that's something I would warn younger Bob about, last year Bob, or 2 years ago Bob, whatever, or anyone else thinking about going that route. Yeah. So it's like, I don't want to deter people from going that route, but I think don't just go starry-eyed thinking, well, I'm going to get a big advance. Because even if you do, like, it may not be as valuable as you think it is, when you think about how much time you're going to spend, because you're going to spend more time traditionally publishing than if you self-published. I'm absolutely convinced of that.
That's great. Bob, it's been awesome. Where can people go to find out more about you and to buy the new book?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the book's everywhere. It's Simple Money, Rich Life, Achieve True Financial Freedom. What is our subtitle? And Design a Life of Eternal Impact. It's on Amazon. One of the things we did, though, I don't know if you gave me this idea, but we created a 3-day challenge out of the book. I pulled 3 of the most important concepts out of it. And so it's just 3daymoneychallenge.com. And so you can go get that there if anybody wants a sneak peek, and then you can decide if you like it before you buy it. It's a great way to test it out.
Cool. What a great idea. 3, and is it the number 3?
Both.
Or it's spelled out 3? Oh,
both of them.
Nice.
3-day money
SEO
challenge.
guy. He's got the redirects set up.
Got to think of it, right? Yeah.
All right. So either way you want to spell it, you said 3-day money challenge.
3daymoneychallenge.com. Yep.
3daymoneychallenge.com. Check it out, or you can go directly on Amazon or wherever else. Simple Money, Rich Life. Bob, you're the man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Chandler. Appreciate it, brother.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book, Published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps, so how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.